Picture this, your phone rings out of the blue and your first reaction is dread. You stare at the screen debating whether to pick up or let it ring into oblivion. 5 seconds later, you're texting that person, "Hey, what's up?" instead of calling back. Welcome to 2025, where an unexpected phone call feels like a jump scare, but a 3-hour group text chat totally normal. Sounds familiar? Subscribe to GENSHIFT. We decode generational behavior one social panic at a time. Trust me, you don't want to miss an episode. Unless, of course, we tried to call you about it. The death of the phone call. It's 8 p.m. A Gen Z college student's phone buzzes with an incoming call from an unknown number. She freezes like it's a horror movie. The call decline button is tapped without remorse. Seconds later, she shoots a text. "Hey, saw you called, everything okay?" Meanwhile, her millennial roommate smirks, who calls without texting first, serial killers probably. Both go back to watching Netflix phones comfortably on Do Not Disturb. For Gen Z and millennials, the phone call is on life support, reserved for food delivery issues, desperate emergencies, or mom calling for the 5th time. A recent survey found that a quarter of 18-34-year-olds literally never answer their phones. They'll ignore the ringing and reply by text instead. In the same poll, nearly 70% of young adults said they'd rather get a text than a call. No surprise, if you grew up with texting as the norm, an incoming call feels as intrusive as someone showing up at your house unannounced. Only a tiny fraction, around 16% of Gen Z and millennials, even think phone calls are a worthwhile use of time. Ouch. And it's not just about time, it's about anxiety. Research out of Australia found that a whopping 90% of Gen Z feel anxious about speaking on the phone, with many ranking an awkward phone call as a top 3 life fear. Phone phobia isn't a joke, it's practically a generational pastime. Why the aversion for one phone calls are time-consuming. You're trapped until the other person decides to hang up. In one study, most millennials admitted they dodge calls because talking live takes too long. Can you blame them? Who has the energy to exchange 10 minutes of pleasantries when a "you good" text does the job? Plus, calls demand full focus. You can't casually scroll Instagram or mute yourself to chew a snack. As one psychologist notes, young people never built the habit of talking on the phone, so now it feels weird because it's not the norm. Many of us secretly assume if someone's calling, it must be serious. In one survey, over half of young respondents said an unexpected call likely means bad news. Combine that with years of scam-likely calls and voicemail spam, and the ringing phone starts to look like a harbinger of doom. Little wonder some have dubbed us Generation Mute Phones, forever on silent mode. Yet despite killing the call, we're more connected than ever. Just silently. As one boomer manager gripes, his young employees rarely pick up and always have an excuse. "Oh, sorry, my phone was on silent, it always is." The truth is, Gen Z and millennials value our time and control. A phone call yanks you into a conversation on the caller's terms. A text lets you reply when convenient. It's a boundary one that says, "I'll get back to you, but on my schedule." Ironically, we still love talking, just not with our voices. Which brings us to our generation's real default setting: rapid-fire thumb-tapping communication, aka texting. Texting culture and speed. Mini-scene morning. A millennial dad texts his Gen Z sister, "Happy B-Day. How are you?" She responds within seconds, "OMG, thanks, I'm good, you." They proceed to have a 20-minute conversation entirely via emojis, GIFs, and abbreviations, all while the dad is in a Zoom meeting and the sister is scrolling TikTok. At the same time, in another chat, a friend messages because it's been 5 minutes with no reply. The Gen Z girl rolls her eyes and shoots back a string of lightning-fast texts. Welcome to texting culture, blink, and you might miss a message. Analysis: texting isn't just communication, it's a lifestyle. For younger generations, the SMS ping or messaging app ding has become the default sound of social interaction. We send and receive about 5 times more texts than calls each day, and that feels perfectly normal. After all, why call to ask a simple question when you can fire off a text and get an answer in 30 seconds? In one survey, 75% of millennials and Gen Z said they prefer texting over calling, likely while literally texting from the bathroom or in the middle of a crowd. Yes, 2/3 of 18-34-year-olds admit they bring their phones into the bathroom, and about half will text while walking in a crowd. Multitasking anyone. Speed is the name of the game. We've grown up with broadband and smartphones, so waiting even a few hours for a reply feels like torture. Studies show that most text messages are read within minutes, often under 3 minutes of being received. We're glued to our screens, reflexively checking that new notification. And we respond almost as fast. The average person replies to a text in just 90 seconds versus 90 minutes for an email. Texting has basically become an ongoing slow drip conversation that you can pause and resume at will. Gen Z perfected the art of the one-word text, the all lowercase reply, and the strategically placed line break. Millennials who remember early 2000s T9 texting quickly adapted. They might sprinkle in punctuation or the occasional LOL, but they're just as fluent in tap typing as their younger counterparts. With texting, you can juggle 5 chats while binge watching a show and doing your online shopping. It's conversation on our own terms and at our pace, which is usually hyper fast. But this convenience comes with a side effect. We've developed unspoken rules about how quickly one should text back. And when those expectations clash, things can get awkward. Is that typing bubble popping up? Let's find out. Let's hear it. Team text or team call, comment below and tag your favorite phone hater. We know you have one. Response expectations. Mini scene. You message your friend, hey, got a sec, and see the dreaded typing. Indicator appear, then vanish, then nothing. 5 minutes later, still no reply. You start internally spiraling. Did I say something wrong? Are they mad? Meanwhile, your phone buzzes. It's your friend on Instagram liking a meme. Now you're really annoyed they have time to meme scroll but not to answer me. Finally, your phone pings, sorry, saw this and forgot to reply, LOL. The emotional roller coaster of modern messaging, ladies and gentlemen. Analysis. In the era of instant communication, we've developed instant expectations. Gen Z and millennials often feel that a text conversation is a live feed. If we're chatting, a lapse of more than a few minutes can start to feel like a snub. One study noted that because young folks grew up with lightning-fast internet, they've come to expect rapid responses when they message someone. Patience may be a virtue, but it's not our strongest suit. Seen at 3:47 p.m. and no reply by 5:00 Q. The group chat screenshots. Why is he leaving me on red? It sounds absurd. But consider this: read receipts and last seen timestamps have turned texting into a psychological minefield. If you see your friend was online 2 minutes ago but hasn't answered your DM from an hour ago, the paranoia sets in. We start crafting narratives. Maybe they're busy, maybe they forgot, or maybe they're ignoring me. The emotional logic here is a mix of FOMO and insecurity, heightened by technology. We know logically everyone is busy, yet a quick text feels so doable that a slow reply can sting. In a recent poll, more than 1/3 of young adults admitted they feel anxious if someone doesn't respond within a few hours. Our brains are trained to expect that instant gratification. This goes both ways. Many of us also feel pressure to reply immediately lest we seem rude. It's common to get a follow-up or the lighthearted guilt trip gif, ahem, the dancing skeleton captioned, I've been waiting for 84 years. In fact, ghosting someone, even for a day, can be seen as a high crime in close friendships. We've essentially raised the bar on availability if your phone is always on you. Why wouldn't you reply promptly, right? The irony is we're all overwhelmed by messages, yet we all expect each other to manage our message right now. It's a recipe for stress, misunderstandings, and a whole lot of sorry for the late reply texts that older generations find amusing. Psychologically, it comes down to control and courtesy. Texting lets us respond when convenient, but social norms now demand that convenient means almost immediately. No wonder the typing bubble induces so much suspense. It's the digital equivalent of someone opening their mouth to answer and pausing for an eternity. We might prefer text to calls, but the flip side is we're always subtly on call via messaging. And when rapid texts still result in confusion or bruised feelings, we reach for another tool to smooth things over: emojis. Because nothing says don't hate me like a well-placed smiley face. But does that smiley actually mean what we think? Time to decode? Emoji and tone confusion. Mini scene. A millennial manager texts her Gen Z intern, please see me in my office. The intern's heart drops. Did she do something wrong? Why does that sound so stern? Quickly, she fires back a thumbs up to acknowledge, which inexplicably irritates her manager. Uh-oh, what happened there? In another chat, 2 friends are debating whether K is a hostile reply. One insists it's just efficient. The other swears they can feel the passive aggression through the phone. Elsewhere, a mom texts her son LOL after hearing his cat died. She thinks it means lots of love. It does not. Welcome to the wild world of tone misinterpretation. Analysis. Without voice inflection or facial expressions, a text message is a breeding ground for miscommunication. Gen Z and Millennials have developed a whole lexicon of emojis, acronyms, and punctuation tricks to convey tone and emotion. Still, we often get our wires crossed. Ever gotten a one-word sure with a period and wondered if the person is secretly upset? You're not alone. In fact, surveys show a strong majority of people, around 78-81%, have been confused by someone's emoji or text tone at least once. Nearly half have even seen a misunderstood emoji or punctuation spark an uncomfortable situation. Who knew a tiny yellow face or a dot at the end of a sentence could cause so much drama? Generational differences make it even trickier. For instance, the humble thumbs-up emoji Millennials and Gen X might use to mean "got it, sounds good." Gen Z, they often read it as sarcastic or passive-aggressive, basically a digital eye roll. A millennial manager might think nothing of ending a text with a period while a Gen Z staffer sees okay, and panics that their boss is displeased. On the flip side, Gen Z's penchant for using a skull to mean "I'm dying laughing" can bewilder older folks who think it's morbid. Even LOL has evolved. Millennials threw it around to signify a chuckle, even if nothing was truly laughed out loud at. Many Gen Zers now use LOL in lowercase not to indicate humor, but to soften a statement or add a slightly awkward self-deprecating tone. It's complex, all right. Emojis were supposed to solve this, giving us a palette of feelings to tack onto our texts. And to a degree, they help. They engage the same part of our brain that reads human faces, allowing a bit of emotional nuance to come through in text. A well-placed can turn a neutral message warm, and a can signal just kidding to avoid offense. But misuse an emoji and you might accidentally offend or confuse. Pro tip, the upside-down smiley is not just a cute smile. It implies sarcasm or frustration. One recent poll even crowned the most confusing emojis in America, confirming that yes, nobody really knows what or exactly mean in every context. The ambiguity is part of the fun and the headache. Pop psychology moment, humans are wired to seek cues for tone and intent. In face-to-face talk, we have body language and voice. In texts, we're basically emotional code breakers, adding or as crutches. Yet misfires happen constantly. We overthink okay versus okay. Versus okay. Each feels different. We agonize over whether to end a sentence with an exclamation mark to seem friendly or if that's over the top. We deploy the crying laugh emoji to ensure our joke lands as a joke, only to learn Gen Z might consider shoogie uncool and prefer the or just a plain LMAO. It's a miracle we understand each other at all through these tiny screens. At least everyone agrees on one thing: the shrug emoticon Sue perfectly captures how we feel about this confusion. In the end, we muddle through with a mix of emojis, LOLs, and question marks to clarify. And when even that fails, some of us resort to the oldest trick in the book: just calling the person to clear things up. Shocking, I know. But wait, didn't we establish we hate those? Well, that's where the choice of platform and personal comfort comes in. Not all communication is created equal. Some prefer a different medium entirely. Let's talk about where all this digital chatter actually happens and how our chosen platforms have their own little cultures. Platform preference and microculture. Mini scene. A group of 4 college friends is planning a weekend meetup, but the conversation is a mess. One friend started an iMessage group chat, blue bubbles galore, but the lone Android user in the group hated being the green bubble outcast and never checks it. Another friend responds only in their Snapchat streak thread, while the third one DM'd everyone separately on Instagram. The fourth friend, she's old school and actually calls each person one by one and wonders why nobody picks up. Ultimately, the plan comes together across 3 apps and a flurry of memes. This, folks, is modern communication, not one unified platform, but a patchwork of texting, DMs, snaps, and the occasional email, each with its own vibe. Analysis: Gen Z and Millennials don't just differ from older generations in how we communicate, we've also fragmented where we communicate. Instead of everyone sticking to, say, phone and email, we have a smorgasbord of platforms, each a mini ecosystem with its own norms. Text messages, SMS story message, are for quick personal chats. Unless your friend prefers WhatsApp or Messenger or Discord or Signal or insert new app here, the result: constant context switching and a unique microculture in each channel. Take the iPhone effect in the US and UK iMessage with its blue text bubbles, reigns among young people, largely because so many use iPhones. In fact, about 80% of Gen Z in the US prefer iPhones over Android, meaning iMessage is the default for many peer groups. Those blue bubbles have become a status symbol. Green bubble Android users, we see you and we promise we don't actually judge much. This blue versus green bubble divide got so real that it's been called a tribal affair in America. Apple knows it too. That exclusivity keeps Gen Z sticking with iPhones like social glue. Meanwhile, across Europe, Asia, and beyond, WhatsApp rules. The same millennial who wouldn't be caught dead making a voice call will happily send a WhatsApp voice memo or 2 or 10. After all, voice notes give you the personal touch of a call without the pressure. Around 37% of young adults 1834 say voice messages are actually their favorite way to communicate. It's basically leaving a voicemail that the other person asked for. And yes, it's somehow cooler than voicemail. Then there's social media messaging surveys find that huge portions of Gen Z regularly chat on Instagram DMs over 80%, and Snapchat around 74%, often even more than on traditional texting. These platforms blend content and chat. You might send a funny TikTok or meme within the chat, blurring the line between talking and sharing media. Each app has its unwritten rules. Snapchat is casual and ephemeral. No one expects a formal greeting there, but you better keep up your streaks. Instagram is for quick exchanges and sending posts. Facebook Messenger skews slightly older, used by millennials to share baby pics or event invites. And Discord might be where your gamer friends basically live 24/7. Even within generations, microcultures abound. One friend group lives in a private Discord server, another in a WhatsApp group titled Wine Moms, ironically. And your coworkers might prefer Slack or Teams chats peppered with GIFs during the day. This platform chaos actually gives us freedom to communicate how we want formality or long-form email or a well-crafted Facebook message, if you still use that, might do. Want brevity and speed, a text or Twitter DM. Craving face-to-face connection. Skip the phone call and hop on a Zoom or FaceTime. Many younger people actually find video calls less stressful than voice calls, since you can at least see the other person's reactions and your own camera to check how you look. A little narcissism never hurt. We're also big on group chats. Having the entire friend squad or family in one ongoing chat means endless in-jokes, meme exchanges, and yes, dozens of daily notifications. It creates a shared space that feels private and communal, a far cry from the one-on-one landline calls of yesteryear. The downside: fragmentation fatigue. Ever message someone on one app, then remember they never check it, so you scurry over to another app to ping them. Yep, us too. It's a running joke that to reach a Gen Z friend, you might have to text, then snap, then DM, and maybe send a carrier pigeon for good measure. But somehow we make it work. We've effectively said one size doesn't fit all for communication. Different contexts and relationships call for different channels. This generation has mastered code switching between a professional email tone, an emoji-laden text, and a voice note full of likes and ums all in the same day. It's chaotic, it's complex, but it's also kind of brilliant. We've never had more ways to stay in touch, even if phone calls have fallen out of favor. Conclusion. Here's the kicker: Gen Z and millennials haven't really stopped communicating. We've just remixed it. We turned conversation into a choose-your-own-adventure text or call DM or voice note emoji or GIF blue bubble or green. Our parents might scratch their heads at why we panic over a ringing phone, yet comfortably send 200 texts a day. But every generation finds new ways to connect that make sense to them. Ours happen to be quieter and snarkier forms of constant contact. In a way, avoiding phone calls is less about shunning human interaction and more about crafting it to feel right for us, with more control, more context, and yes, fewer awkward goodbyes. Will phone calls go the way of the fax machine? Probably not entirely. Sometimes you just need to hear a voice, whether it's a love confession or, let's be real, ordering pizza when the app crashes. But the cultural shift is clear. We're redefining talking. Writing is the new talking, images are the new words, and being phone shy is the new normal. So next time you catch yourself typing out a response to a missed call, know that you're part of a generational shift that perplexes some and delights others. No judgment here. Communication is evolving, and we're all learning the etiquette as we go. One day, Gen Z and millennials will be the ones complaining about whatever Gen Alpha or Beta invent to avoid texting. Telepathic holograms, perhaps? Until then, we'll keep decoding those typing bubbles and swapping memes in the group chat. If you found yourself nodding or smirking at any of this, you know what to do. Hit like, subscribe, and share this with that one friend who still leaves voicemails. Chances are they need a little hint. No more phone calls, please, and thank you.